Hey guys, Chris here from Carolette Farm. The month of May has been really good to us here in the garden. We've got a lot of things that are thriving, but our bok choy is telling us it's about done for the season and needs to be harvested. We've been slowly harvesting a few heads here and there. We've shared some with friends, but today is the day I need to go ahead, pick it all, and then process it because with this warm weather, it is beginning to bolt. A little update on the bok choy before I pick it. We started these plants from seed around March 7th, and if I'm not mistaken, they went into the garden around March 30th. They look fantastic and they've done really, really well. This is our first season growing bok choy, and I'm going to say it's been pretty successful. We have had some issues with black flea beetles on our bok choy, and although they were sprayed several weeks ago, we are seeing a few more beetles on them today as we are harvesting them. As we work to harvest the first crop of the day, the bok choy here, we decided that we wanted to harvest the leaves off of the stalks because they were quite tough. And as you see, we wound up with 2 full buckets of bok choy leaves. Not half bad. I'm really happy with those 2 buckets of bok choy greens. I can't wait to cook them up and use them in all sorts of things. It's so hot, like I told you, mid-90s. I had to braid my hair. I couldn't bear to have it down on my neck any longer. But I want to show you our broccoli plants. They are looking so fantastic. We have 6 wonderful heads, bigger than my fist around, and I am just watching them like a hawk. We don't want them to go too far, but we also want them to mature to the best of their abilities before we start to harvest. But keep your eyes peeled. Soon we'll be working to harvest the broccoli, but not just yet. Here's a little sneak peek at those really beautiful broccoli heads that we have forming. These did come from our local farm and garden co-op. We did not start these from seed, but I am just so happy to see how well they're thriving. We have a couple of plants down on the end that we did start from seed, but they do not yet have big, beautiful heads like those that came from the co-op. Now that I finished up with the bok choy, I'm going to turn my attention to the collard greens next door. Some of the leaves are getting really big and they tend to get a little tough. Not a big deal, you just kind of boil them a little longer, they'll soften up. And if your collards like ours have the big thick vein in them, some of them are almost as big as my thumb, you can just trim that part out and it helps them to be a little more tender. So there's not a big concern with them going farther and getting larger and tougher, but there's no time like the present to go ahead, cut the largest of the leaves. The rest of the plants will continue to grow. We'll keep harvesting for many weeks to come. Sometimes a crop like this will even continue throughout the summer months. Sometimes they fizzle. It's hard to really know for sure, but for right now they look great, and today will be the first harvest of collard greens. Here's a look at our collard green crop before I start to harvest. These, like the bok choy, were started from seed back around early March, and they've been here in the garden for close to 2 months now. They're looking great, but I definitely want to get some of these largest leaves picked today. You can see a plant like this, especially on the end where they had more sunlight, have really developed some very large leaves that I'm going to say are just perfect for picking. A little gardening tip, don't do what I did. Don't bring a metal-handled knife out to the garden on a sunny 90-plus degree day because guess what? It gets really, really hot. It's cooled off now. I had to wrap it in my sleeve to hold it initially. I like a small serrated knife though, just to kind of cut those leaves. And you know, usually I actually bring a cheaper knife that has a plastic handle. I grabbed the metal one today, but I'll have to remember the little plastic handled knife is for sure a better choice on a day like today. I'm beginning to see a few flea beetles here on my collards as well. You can see something has chewed a few holes into these leaves, and I'll need to be really mindful. We want to make sure that we don't have an infestation, and you know, we don't want to lose our crop to the beetles. But so far I don't see many, just a few, but I know we had a bunch of them on the bok choy, which was next door, and so they will likely be moving over here to nibble on these plants next. I ended up harvesting all of the medium to large leaves from the collard greens. These will continue to grow and mature over the next couple of weeks, and we'll have to keep a close eye out on those flea beetles to make sure they don't become a bigger issue. I have a nice bucket now of collards I'll also take inside. I'll wash up, I'll chop, and I'll go ahead and likely blanch them. I find that really helpful. A lot of our greens we tend to go ahead and freeze, and that seems to be the best method for us. But a pretty darn good day, you know, 2 buckets of bok choy, a bucket of collards. I picked a few sugar snaps earlier, so just a really wonderful May harvest. Here is a quick look at those sugar snaps that I harvested earlier this morning. I planted these the first week in March. We ended up not harvesting very many sugar snaps, but because this was the first harvest, that's not surprising. Like a lot of crops, they tend to come in slow in the beginning and then they're booming for a few days, if not weeks, and then you get just a few at the end. So this is just the beginning of what's to come. In walking past the kale, I am actually deciding that I do want to pick some today. I had not originally intended to pick kale, but I see that some of the leaves are getting quite large, and I personally like my kale when it's still small and fairly tender. Like a lot of my crops, I have to first remove the netting that is covering the hoop and the crop. It's to protect these crops from the groundhog, but it does mean that the harvesting stage can take a little longer. Similar to the collards, I'm just going to be picking the larger kale leaves that are here. They're still pretty tender at this point, but there's just no need for them to get much bigger than this as far as I'm concerned. I have found that the kale sometimes can get really buggy, you know, come June, and so I really am kind of a little more inclined to eat it sooner rather than later. You can see actually that little teeny yellow thing I believe is a bit of a worm. So the bugs are coming, they are inevitable. I also want to point out there are these darker green leaves like this one here. These are more mature leaves, whereas the brighter yellow green, those are the newer growth. So I will not be harvesting those, but all of these darker green leaves, whether they're larger or not, are the ones that I am primarily planning on harvesting today. Another reason I like to pick my kale when it's small and tender like this, I ended up with about a half a bucket today, is because you could probably tell my seeds were spread and planted very thick. I just sort of sprinkled them on the soil, and rather than come back and thin them and have them well spaced, I just let them go, do their thing. And then I do always plan to come back and harvest fairly regularly. Planting kale like this and harvesting it such as I do, it's kind of the easy, lazy approach perhaps. But when you have a big, busy garden, well, big, I mean, our garden isn't huge, but it keeps us pretty busy. Sometimes you need to have a crop that is just easy, and that's what our kale is here. Now that I have finished with the kale, it's on to the final crop of the day. The last thing to harvest today is a head of lettuce. This will be in our dinner tonight. You can see I even have a little sunflower right here. The lettuce though looks fantastic, and we have been harvesting, you know, a head every day or so, sharing some with friends and family. And now it's just time to choose which head will be joining us for dinner. I think this one looks pretty good right here. That's a pretty darn nice head of lettuce. It's bigger than my head. We have been so lucky with our lettuce this year. I felt things were a little late going into the garden, and it was really hot a few weeks ago. We're having another really hot, you know, kind of heat wave right now for the middle to end of May. Fortunately though, we are getting to our lettuce before it starts to bolt. It's not the least bit bitter. We had taco salad last night. We're gonna have some grilled chicken on it tonight, but really, really nice heads of lettuce this spring. Thank you so much for joining me today in the mid to late May garden. We had a fantastic day of harvest, the first big harvest. Let's recap. We had 2 buckets of bok choy. We had 1 bucket of collard greens, a half a bucket of kale, and a beautiful head of lettuce. Soon we'll have that broccoli in the background, and then there are also more cabbages that are looking pretty nice. So I can't be happier. The garden is doing fantastic. It's weathering the heat really well. We're going to keep watering everything super duper well, and pretty soon we'll be putting those tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant in. But it does have to cool off a little. I don't want to have it be too hot and then just be too stressful on those poor little plants. So they're going to have to hang in there on the porch. They're currently, let me show you. They're currently in the shade of the umbrella. They've had plenty of water today, so they're doing fine, but pretty soon they will make their way here into the garden. We finished tilling the other day, so everything is poised and ready for them. Check back soon. We'll give you tons of updates, and we hope to see you in the future. Bye guys, happy gardening.